The crystal chandelier above the private dining room spun like a carousel. 1 second the laughter of Louise's family was wrapping around me like expensive perfume. The next the words "Louise is engaged to Mark" landed in my chest like a punch. My champagne flute slipped. I remember the wet shatter on marble. The collective gasp. And then the floor rushing up to meet me. Everything went black before I could even scream her name. When I opened my eyes, the world smelled like bleach and old flowers. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My head throbbed in time with the heart monitor. And there she was, Louise, curled in the ugly plastic chair beside the bed. Elbows on her knees. Face buried in her hands. The same Louise I'd woken up next to for 4 years. The same woman whose laugh could quiet every storm in my head. But for one terrifying heartbeat I didn't recognize her. The curve of her cheek, the way her dark hair fell across her forehead. It belonged to a stranger who had just announced she was marrying someone else. She lifted her head. Our eyes met. "Philippa," she whispered. Voice cracking like thin ice. The sound of my name in her mouth should have felt like home. Instead it felt like a door slamming shut. A nurse came in. Murmured something about stress and dehydration. I barely heard her. All I could do was stare at the engagement ring glinting on Louise's left hand, white gold, simple. Nothing like the silver band I'd been saving for since last Christmas. The one I'd planned to slip on her finger during our trip to the Adirondacks next month. Louise waited until we were alone again. She reached for my hand but stopped halfway. Fingers hovering like she wasn't sure she still had permission. "It's not what you think," she said quietly. The words hung between us. Fragile as the 4-line taped to my arm. I swallowed the metallic taste in my mouth. "Then explain it to me, Lou. Because right now I feel like I just watched you set our whole life on fire and smile for the family photos." She exhaled a long, shaky breath that smelled faintly of the peppermint tea she always drank when she was anxious. The same tea I'd brewed for her the night we first said "I love you" on my tiny balcony overlooking the East River. Back when the world felt possible. The doctor discharged me the next morning with strict orders to rest. Louise drove me home in silence. City traffic humming around us like white noise. Our apartment smelled exactly the way it always did, her vanilla cedar perfume mixed with the lavender candle I kept on the windowsill. The throw blanket we'd bought together at the Brooklyn Flea was still draped over the couch. Everything looked the same. Nothing felt the same. She helped me to the bedroom. Fingers brushing the small of my back the way she used to when I was sick. I flinched. Of course she noticed. Louise had always noticed everything about me, the way I tapped my foot. When I was pretending to be fine. The exact pitch of my sigh when I was holding back tears. "I told them it was for the firm," she said once we were sitting on the edge of the bed. Her voice was low. Careful. "Mark's dad is a senior partner. My parents have been pushing this for months. If I don't play along, the trust fund my grandparents set up for the firm expansion, it's gone. And so is my shot at making partner before 30. She laughed once. Bitter and soft. "I know how that sounds." "God. I know." I studied the tiny scar on her knuckle from the time we tried to bake sourdough together and she burnt herself on the Dutch oven. I used to kiss that scar every morning. Now it just looked like evidence of a life I thought we were building together. "You could have told me," I said. My throat felt raw. Before the whole room heard it like some goddamn announcement at a royal wedding. She closed her eyes. I was going to. Tonight. After the party. I had the whole speech planned, how it's only 6 months. How we'd still be us in private. How I'd come out to them properly once the deal was signed. Her hand finally landed on mine, warm and trembling. But then you looked at me like I'd already left you. I pulled away gently. Not angry. Just tired. The kind of tired that settles behind your ribs and makes every breath feel like work. I fainted because for 1 second I believed you'd chosen them over us. And when I woke up, bed didn't look like the Louise who promised me we'd never hide again. The days that followed moved like slow-motion film. She slept on the couch even though I never asked her to. I caught her watching me from the kitchen while I made coffee. The way her shoulders curved inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. Every small kindness hurt more than silence would have. The way she left my favorite mug out. The way she played the playlist we made on our first road trip up the Hudson. The way her fingers would brush mine when she handed me the remote. Then pull back like she'd touched something hot. One night the rain hammered the windows so hard it sounded like applause. I couldn't sleep. I found her on the fire escape, wrapped in my old hoodie. Cigarette between her fingers even though she quit 2 years ago. The orange glow lit the planes of her face, sharp cheekbones. The faint freckles across her nose that only showed in summer. I stepped out beside her. Cold metal bit through my socks. You're going to ruin your lungs again. She smiled sadly. Exhaled smoke that curled into the wet night. Some habits die harder than others. We stood there listening to the city breathe, sirens in the distance. A neighbor's dog barking 3 floors down, the low hum of the subway under the street. I could smell her shampoo, the same coconut one she'd used since college. It used to make me bury my face in her neck just to breathe her in. Now it made my chest ache with something too big for words. Tell me what you're thinking, she said finally. Her voice was barely louder than the rain. I laughed once. I'm thinking about the night we met. Pride Parade, you in that ridiculous rainbow tank top. Spilling your drink on my shoes and apologizing for 20 straight minutes. You looked at me like I was the only person in the entire crowd. I swallowed. I keep waiting for that girl to come back. But every time I look at you now I see the version who stood in front of her parents and let them toast to a future that doesn't include me. Louise flicked the cigarette over the railing. It disappeared into the dark. She turned to me. She never left, Pip. She's just scared. Terrified, actually. Because if I lose this chance, I lose the version of my life I thought I was supposed to want. The safe one. Every time she thinks about grandchildren and country clubs. Her hand found mine again. This time I let her. Her thumb traced the same circle it always had, 3 times clockwise. Like a promise. The touch sent warmth racing up my arm even while my heart tried to stay cold. We went inside. The apartment felt smaller. Heavier. She kissed me in the hallway like she was afraid I might vanish if she pressed too hard. It started tentative, lips brushing. Breath catching, then deepened with 4 years of muscle memory. I tasted salt and peppermint and the faint bitterness of the cigarette. My hands remembered the dip of her waist. The way she sighed into my mouth when I tugged her closer. For a minute the world narrowed to just us, the rain on the glass. The soft click of her engagement ring against my collarbone. But when we pulled apart, the ring was still there. Cold metal between us. The next week was a masterclass in microtension. She'd reach for my hand in the grocery store and I'd let her. Then remember the fake save-the-date cards arriving in the mail. I'd catch her staring at me while I worked at the dining table and feel my stomach flip with love and nausea at the same time. One evening she came home early, kicked off her heels, and crawled into my lap on the couch without a word. We stayed like that for almost an hour. Her face pressed to my neck, my fingers in her hair. Neither of us speaking. The silence felt louder than any fight we'd ever had. Eventually the words had to come out. We were in the kitchen at 2 a.m. eating cold leftover Thai food straight from the carton. The city lights painted orange stripes across the ceiling. Louise set her fork down and looked at me with those dark eyes that had always seen straight through every wall I tried to build. I can't do both, I said before she could speak. My voice cracked on the last word. I can't be the secret girlfriend while you play house with Mark at family dinners. I can't smile in the wedding photos knowing I'm the reason you're miserable underneath the dress. I love you enough to want more for you than half a life. But I love myself enough to know I deserve more than half of you. She stared at me for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside a car alarm wailed and then stopped. I don't trust anyone, I whispered. The words falling out before I could stop them. Not even you right now. Not when every promise feels like it comes with an expiration date. Louise's face crumpled. Not dramatically, just a slow, quiet breaking. A single tear slid down her cheek and caught on her lip. She didn't wipe it away. I know, she said. And I hate myself for making you feel that way. But Pip, I'm trying to figure out how to choose us without losing everything else I've worked for. It's not fair. None of it is fair. We cried then. Jake, and you can't catch your breath. I held her while she shook and she held me while I fell apart. The kind of crying that leaves you hollowed out and strangely clean at the same time. In the end there was no grand gesture. No last-minute confession to her parents. No perfect solution where everyone wins. 2 weeks later I helped her pack a suitcase for the engagement photos weekend in the Hamptons. She stood in the doorway in the soft gray sweater I'd bought her for her birthday last year. Looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The ring still sat on her finger like a brand. I'm going to tell them after the merger closes, she said. 3 months. Maybe 4. I swear, I nodded. Part of me still did. But the bigger part, the part that had fainted in that dining room and woken up unable to recognize. The woman I loved knew some promises can't be kept without breaking something else. I kissed her forehead. Breathing in the last trace of her scent mixed with the rain that had started falling again. Take care of yourself, Lou. She lingered on the threshold. Fingers brushing my wrist one final time. I love you. That part was never fake. I know, I said. And I did. That was the cruelest part. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded final. I stood in the empty apartment listening to the rain drum against the windows. The city moving on outside like nothing had happened. My chest felt too tight and too open at the same time. I didn't faint again. I didn't cry in the dramatic movie way. I just sat on the couch with the throw blanket that still smelled like both of us. And let the grief settle in my bones like winter coming early. Some love stories don't end with rings or white dresses or happy ever afters. Some end with 2 people who loved each other fiercely. Who tried. And maybe that's the most honest ending there is. I still don't know if she'll come back. I still don't know if I'll be able to let her in if she does. But I do know this, I recognized myself again the morning after she left. For the first time in weeks I looked in the mirror and saw the woman who refused to disappear into someone else's version of safe. And that felt like the beginning of something real.